Welcome back to episode 2 of Contra Mundum. My name is Andrew Isker, and I'm here with my co-host, CJay Engel. Hello, CJay.
What's going on? Hey, it's funny because you said that you're here with me, but I'm like stuck in a basement library, and you're on a golf course. So
yes, coming live to you from Florida. Yeah, coming live to you from Florida, from the land of Ron DeSantis. Here am I. But yes, CJay's hidden away in the CJay bunker. But CJay, what are we going to talk about today?
Well, on your vacation, I had to do all the legwork and pull together a list. So we're going to start with the Super Bowl, which is a pretty lame event. You know, like the Super Bowl is a very American thing. And like as America has transitioned into this like woke dystopia, the NFL's kind of followed along with it, you know, and you just see the symbology everywhere. And the whole thing has become super like effeminate and like it's regime ball, and I can't even watch it. So you didn't watch it either, huh?
I didn't. Well, I mean, I was actually on the airplane on the way to Florida from Minnesota.
Okay.
So, and I got a really cheap flight because it was scheduled during the Super Bowl. So that's why. But really, I mean, if you read Christopher Caldwell's Age of Entitlement, I think I referenced it last week. If you've read that book, you'll realize that like the NFL has been on the cutting edge of American progressivism, really for a long time, like our entire lives. There was one state. This is what Caldwell brought up in the book. There was one state that like refused to celebrate Martin Luther King Day. And it was Arizona. And so the NFL, like in response, did the same thing that the Major League Baseball did to Georgia after they passed election reform. They moved the Super Bowl from Arizona. So like that's the tie-in to like to all of this is like this has been going on for a while, that like the social agenda, whatever the progressive front line is, like the NFL is very close to that for a very long time. It's only become really obvious now where it's like end racism is plastered in the end zone, and the ad that says football is gay, in June and things like that, where it's like, I mean, it's so obnoxious, and you can't really avoid it at all. Before it was kind of in the background.
I mean, that's one of the things that we're going to talk about is like the character of Western persecution. That's exactly it. It's not a gun to your head.
Yeah.
Like confess that Jesus is not Lord or we'll kill you or whatever, like all that stuff. That's complete. They're setting you up to expect a certain type of persecution that's not coming down the pipeline at all, at least in the foreseeable future. Yeah. But it is enforceable by the private institutions, by the corporations, by the sports, by the entertainment industry. Those are the things that are reinforcing the regime narratives. So we're going to get to
Absolutely.
That. But we'll start here. We'll start with my article, just because I was particularly peeved to see like Candace Owens and a bunch of the Daily Wire type media. I call them media conservatives, and the media conservatives. They were saying things like, the Rihanna concert or whatever, the halftime show was not that bad. And conservatives who are making a big deal of it are going to lose the culture war, because they treat this thing like it was this horrible show, but it actually wasn't. But one of the things that's hilarious is like,
it's the shadow following them to perdition. That's the
right.
That's
the Dabney.
That's the line. Yeah.
Yeah. So
or the Michael Malice one of conservatism is progressivism driving the speed limit. Right. It's totally true.
Yeah, exactly. And so like you have like a couple weeks ago, you had like the actual satanic like festival with the Grammys, right? And so they set that up. Yeah. And then Rihanna can come out with all the same symbology, all the same color coordinations, all the same posturing and dances that have the same similar milieu. But because it wasn't quite as explicit, that's now the conservative concert. It's hilarious because they set themselves up for failure. And if that's winning the culture war, then I don't want to win. That's retarded. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah. Exactly. It's like, it's not culture. Like you have to play in their ballpark using their rules where you're always set up to fail. Like there's no counterculture allowed to to operate in within that paradigm. Like it's just, you could praise Rihanna or be against it, against her and that kind of music. Like that's all that you're allowed to do. I mean, it's playing according to their rules. It's ridiculous. And the only way is to like not play, is to say like that's just weird and stupid.
Exactly.
It's not worth paying attention to.
So exactly. So I call it the Rihannification of American culture. But like in my interpretation, like Rihanna is just a symbol. So what they do is they put these people up and they're symbols. They act as kind of monuments that remind everybody that you're in a culturally occupied zone. And she represents like that regime reinforcement narrative of you're occupied, you don't belong here, your culture's been taken over, and this is what you have to look to for your entertainment. You know, this is what your kids get to grow up on. And it's like the Rihannification of everything. And conservatives have to play that. They have to endorse it, and they have to say it's completely fine and look the other way, even though it has absolutely nothing to do with historical, like American culture, American football, American baseball, American music. Mm-hmm. It's a complete repudiation of all that. And they set people like her up as a reminder of who conquered whom.
Yeah. Yeah. And they allow, though, the one, you know, piece that maybe not pushback, but you know, nuance I would maybe give it is that you look at the Super Bowl overall, they allow one, you have the controversy over like the black national anthem versus the national anthem, and how that's become a thing, how there's a separate national anthem for black people in America, but then also like the one piece of maybe like Americana or like genuine American culture, which is also Rihannified, is country music. Like country Western music is very much like the stuff of the heartland, right? And it is, so they let probably one of the more genuinely country music artists, Chris Stapleton, do the national anthem. But it just reminds me of like how ghettoized actual Americana is. Right. And it's also like the hot meme of the week was the Yellowstone meme. And like the point there is like, okay, you've got that show that, I mean, most of the like normal people that I know like really like it. They think this is a great show every Sunday night. That's what I watch. And it's because like it adopts the aesthetics of you know, rural American people, like people that recognize that kind of look like us. And yet they smuggle in all this like woke stuff through that show, quite obviously, right? And so and so it's the same kind of thing. Like that's country music. That's what country music has been, certainly in the last 10 or 15 years. But really, I mean, the 90s and 2000s was that way as well. And so it's you have these things where, you know, there maybe is a genuine possibility of an alternative culture, a separate culture, or something that pays some credence to traditional culture of America, but it's totally subverted from the ground up. Like there's no possibility of that. Like they're not going to make a spin-off of Yellowstone that's about how you know, that's about how like the 1930s isolationists were right. Like they're not gonna, and like or anything like that, or like the immigration restrictionists of the 1900s were actually not wrong. To fight these people. Like, they're not gonna do that. You know, like they're not gonna use these things to like to facilitate any kind of like paleo culture in America. That's not gonna be allowed. Right. It's only gonna be like this pale imitation. Exactly. So like those are your alternatives. And so, I mean, that's what like the people like Candace Owens and the Daily Wire and people like that represent, is like this tepid, you know, is the shadow of progressivism on its way to perdition. Like that's what they are too. Like they are, there's not going to be any genuine conflict with the left from those people. It's always going to be the progressivism of 5 minutes ago. And you see that like Dave Rubin is a host on the Daily Wire. Like, come on, give me a break.
Exactly. You know? I think one of the points that I was trying to make is like there's this phrase to describe these people, like values conservatism. So what they do is they take these like singular like behavioral reference like how to behave well. Like you're supposed to be kind to people, don't steal, don't lie. Like even like be like sexually normal, which is already now breaking down with people like Dave Rubin. But you have all these individual things, and you can place this in any cultural setting and call it conservative. So it's like a values conservative. You have these like values that you can put anywhere, and it automatically makes the culture conservative. And I think that's the complete antithesis of like what it actually means to be a rooted conservative, aware of your cultural background and your heritage and your willingness to defend and preserve that and continue it on through your posterity. I think that's like a more meaningful conservatism. But the values conservatism that dominates media conservatism, like Conservative Incorporated, is really working to undermine and subvert like the historical Christian or historical American way. So that I have little patience for. I have less patience for that type of conservatism than I do the out and out leftists, because they're more transparent. Yeah. You recognize that they're the enemy, and you can declare war on them. Whereas the conservatives just waste everybody's time.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Well, moving on to our next topic. The other thing that has dominated the news all week long has been the disaster in East Palestine, Ohio, the train derailment and then subsequent fallout of the environmental disaster in that town. So, CJay, the question that really, especially in kind of our world, the world that we kind of inhabit, and the people that we follow and that follow us and so forth, the question that has dominated that is this a conspiracy? Is the government trying to nuke small rural towns like East Palestine, Ohio, and destroy everyone? Or is it totally a coincidence? Is it just typical collapse? So that we've been facing for our entire lifetimes, really, and particularly the last 20 years. So is this conspiracy to destroy rural America, or is this a genuine, just a genuine coincidence?
I think the conspiracy to destroy rural America has been going on for decades, and this is one of the fruits of that. It's like they don't want to pay attention to the quality and maintenance and prolonging of the flyover America, of middle America. They don't want to have anything to do with it, and so they will neglect those areas. And so as they begin to become decrepit and fall apart, they're going to just ignore it. So I think that's part of the overall conspiracy, is they just don't care enough about those areas and the people that occupy them. They don't care enough about them to do anything that would prevent these types of things from happening. I think we're going to see a lot more of this, just because there's no ability or will, political will or corporate will, to invest in these areas. I don't think it's purely coincidence either, though. The fallout from some of these things have to do with like natural resources like water. A lot of them have to do with like food processing and eggs. Especially chickens. That's not coincidental. Those benefit the very types of people in power that you can fortify yourself against if you have these resources. The more that they fall apart, the more benefit the more that it benefits the people who are working to undermine it. So it's not a coincidence, but I don't think they're issuing drone strikes or anything like that. Although it is really bizarre. Like within a week, you have 4 different locations with these chemical outbreaks. That is bizarre to me, and I don't put anything past them at all.
Well, and I mean, I initially was, somewhat skeptical of any possibility of a conspiracy. I mean, you know me, I don't believe in conspiracies at all, ever. But I was skeptical at first. Then I saw like something about the CDC changing something a couple days ago before the accident, like a week or two before the accident, regarding vinyl chloride. So that's a little bit suspicious. I mean, maybe that's a coincidence too. But at the end of the day, like, I don't discount it. I think it's more than likely, it's plausible that this is just a standard accident. Apparently there's like 1,700 train derailments a year in our country, which that's like 4 a day. I mean, some of them are much more minor than this one, obviously. Most of them are, I would imagine. But these are the things that happen. But I think, are there, is there an overarching plan to de-Kulak-ize middle America? Of course there is. It's obvious. I mean, you don't even have to look at like the environmental damage that's going on. But by the way, too, it's like, I mean, these people, right, just watching the response, right, these people who want to take away my gas stove, right, these people who like want to get rid of automobiles, right, and are so like, and who weep tears over the possibility that someone might use a plastic straw somewhere on the earth. Right. These same people like are totally blasé about igniting a giant mushroom cloud of toxic, chemicals over a town on the Ohio River watershed. Right. I mean, it's absurd to me. Like, I mean, it's utterly ridiculous. I mean, obviously those people they do not care about the environment at all. They don't. It's just something, a political tool to beat people over the head with, obviously. And everyone knows that. But like the question of like, is there a conspiracy to de-Kulak-ize middle America? Do they hate these people and want them dead? Of course they do. Yeah, of course they do. They hate us. Yeah, absolutely. And you don't even have to look at like incidents like this to know that. Just look at fentanyl, or just look at the issue of fentanyl. Like you mentioned earlier, like political will, right? If there was political will to keep fentanyl and opiates and meth and heavy narcotics like that out of the country, they could do it, right? They could do it in a heartbeat. Right, that's like the big, like one of the kind of like libertarian ideas that I just thought like, well, it's just always gonna get in no matter what. There's nothing you could do. You can't stop a product, and it's like, oh, absolutely you can. Like, and you can see that because like they got white people to stop using the N-word all throughout. like you don't even have to like grow a poppy and then distill it down into stuff and then transport it across the border. Like you could just make that word happen by speaking. And they completely eliminated that from the entire country, like that, like easily, right? Because political will existed to do that, to accomplish that end. So can they stop fentanyl? Absolutely they can. Absolutely they can. But they don't. In fact, they actually facilitate the importation of it.
Yeah, they profit from it politically and financially.
Yeah, this is known that they do this, and so of course they can do this stuff. Like. Yeah. And so they don't care. It's not just that they don't care. Like they want these people dead. They want these communities, these Rust Belt areas to be depressed and destroyed. Mm-hmm. They want this. They want this stuff to happen. And so like, do they not care? Like, so they'll let, corporations like Norfolk Southern, slip through the cracks and push through deferred maintenance and just not repair stuff. They'll let them have incompetent people running the rails. I mean, some of this I think also is related to, to that end. I don't know how much you paid attention to this. I have some friends that work in the railroad industry that were on top of this way more, but like there was almost a huge rail strike of all the rail workers in the entire country this last year. And like the Biden administration put the total kibosh on it completely. Mm-hmm. And really gave all these rail workers a very, really raw deal. And so like how much does that play into this as well? I think quite a bit, partly too because it's like blue collar workers, even though like supposedly they're the party of unions and so on and so forth, like that's not their constituency that they represent. They hate those people, right? They hate them even if they vote for them. Like they hate them. Like they hate the people of middle America. Like that is their political agenda. And so, it's just funny, like watching, I've been here in Florida, and Fox News is on everywhere, including my parents' house. And, so I'm watching all they do all day long is talk about where's Mayor Pete? And they show these like graphics of him swinging on the thing. And it's like, where's Mayor Pete? Why isn't he out there in a hazmat suit himself cleaning this up? And it's like, no one, despises Pete Buttigieg more than me. Okay. Like just get that through. Like nobody, do I care that like all the boomers are hating on him right now? Not at all. Like great. More of it. Wonderful. But, the commentary on it has been, so pathetic because it's like, oh, this is just the Biden administration like scoring these cheap political points against the Biden administration when it's like missing the forest for the trees, that there's this overarching political goal of the left to destroy the country from within. That's what they don't see.
But that's the complete like Republican line is like, if the Democrats have a petty little technical mess up, it's like, well, we can run the economy better. We can be more efficient in this area. We can spend less and get more out of it. We're better at being not racist. Like, that's just kind of like their thing is they have a better competence at doing the same things that the regime wants to do anyways. Like that's their entire argument is like the problem with the whole situation there. And there's been other ones too, like in North Carolina or South Carolina, there's been more of those, but their whole argument is that the Republicans could choose a better man for the job. And that's such a stupid, that's so beyond what we need to be talking about right now. You know what I mean?
I know. It really is like, it reminds me of the fact that like that,
it's like Dinesh D'Souza, like saying, well, the Republican Party has a much longer history of being against, slavery. It's like, who cares?
Like racism and things like that. Yeah. It's like, exactly. It's like you want to make their goal, the regime's goal, more efficient. Like we're gonna get there faster because we're better at it than you are. I mean, it is just like I was gonna bring up like Milton Friedman is the one that came up with income tax withholding because he said you'll be able to raise taxes more easily by doing it this way. Yeah. And it's like that's like we're going to make that more efficient. Isn't that wonderful? And it's like that's what Republicans do is they I mean especially in the 20th century, like their goal is to maybe be like a slight release valve against what the left is doing and not provide any legitimate resistance to it whatsoever.
Yeah, you know where Obamacare came from? It came from Mitt Romney because he opposed
in Massachusetts.
Yeah, he opposed Hillary Clinton's single payer solution and came up with this structure of things that was more efficient, more economically sound, more running government like a business, and then it became national and it was Obamacare. So it's like I don't. Yeah, those critiques are so meaningless to what we should be talking about, which is much more foundational, much more fundamental, and they should seek to eliminate, these types of positions. Like, I'd be happy to let things fall apart a little bit in my area just to get the TSA, the transportation, agencies out of the way. So
yeah. I mean, I live my home is not far from the railroad tracks. I mean, I was thinking about this. Like, this could be my town. Yeah. Right. This could be my town that this is happening in, and it's terrifying, right?
Yeah.
That like, and you see the things that have happened to these people, that their homes are now this toxic waste pit, but the EPA says it's totally safe to live there, and the governor of Ohio is like, yeah, you could live within 1 mile of the disaster zone, you'd be just fine. And like when he's asked, hey, would you like to like live there? Would you move your family to that spot? Like he totally sidesteps the question. And it's like, I would be taking water from East Palestine, Ohio, and like this is something that should be done. Like this is actual political action of people in Ohio. If you're in Ohio near this area, like safely gather some water from the area that they say is safe in East Palestine, right? Go into your kitchen sink, pour the water, put it in a mason jar, and take it to Governor DeWine and say, if this water is safe to drink, like your government says it is, you take a drink of this. Right, on camera for everybody to see. Right, you do it. Right, and they should be badgering him everywhere he shows his face in that state. They should be saying, "Drink this water. Drink this water. You say it's safe, you drink it. Right, have your kids drink it. Have your grandkids drink it. Right. Of course, he's not going to do that. Of course, he's not going to. Well, he's a coward and a liar. Right. I mean, the fact that guy got reelected. Oh my goodness! Like that tells you where the Republican Party is at. That guy like that could get reelected in that state. So before I get any more furious and angry about it, let's move on to the next thing. The next point. You had a tweet, and then I stole it, and I wrote an article about it, which will appear on Gab News. But you had a tweet about martyrdom, or Christian martyrdom in what I call Christian martyrdom in trash world. What's that about? What did you mean by this tweet? Tell us about the point that you're making about martyrdom versus martyrdom in the past.
Martyrdom in the past, I think anyone who kind of came of age in like the 80s and 90s grew up on like the Voice of the Martyrs model. Like there's like horror stories of like after the Chinese Revolution and in the Soviet Union, like Stalinist, where someone would put you up against the wall and make you deny Christ, and if you didn't they would shoot your wife or whatever, like those types of just terrible stories, imprisonment, like actual forced coercion. I call that masculine totalitarianism. It's kind of like, a guns and knives out type of totalitarianism.
Yeah.
Where you have to learn to physically fight because there's those physical dangers all around you. We grew up on that. And so there's this kind of instinct that pervades evangelicalism at large that thinks of this American future where that situation is happening. And I don't think that's helpful. I don't think that's a profitable way of thinking about things, because what we've actually seen in the fruits of liberalism is the complete reverse of that. It's not masculine, it's feminine. It appeals to whether you're being too insensitive. It appeals to whether you're catering to people's minority status. It focuses on, whether you're in a position of power and unfairly taking advantage of someone just by, the function you play in the social hierarchy. That's a very petty, like quasi-feminist type approach to things. And I think that the effeminate totalitarianism that's upon us is going to be much more psychological. It's going to pervade the providers of like our goods and services and the corporations. They're going to make you remember that because of your religion, because of your race, because of your cultural heritage, you are an oppressor group, and you don't deserve to be part of society unless you go through the penance and you repent and you admit to the new orthodoxies. There's no guns in that situation. It's just, look, if you want to eat, just admit that gays are legitimate, that transsexualism is a emancipatory process. Like, you just have to admit all these things, and if you do that, you get to participate in society. You get a job, you get to go buy food, you get electricity in your house, like all these things that are coming with this dystopian situation. It's very effeminate. There's this article in Chronicles, I think it was a year ago, by Anthony Esselin, and it was called Effeminate Cruelty. And he talks about did you read that? I think it's behind a paywall, unfortunately, right now, but it's called Effeminate Cruelty, and it's amazing. And it just talks about the petty little DMV lady culture that we've produced, and it's pervaded into our churches, it's pervaded into our private institutions. Like, we always talk about the difference between the private sector and the public sector and like all this bad stuff. No, that's not how the total regime works. In the situation where we have the total state, everything's been effeminate, everything's revolutionary, everything's dystopian, and it tries to attack your mind at all times. No one's going to put a gun to your head, but you will be your livelihood will be threatened, your reputation will be threatened if you say the wrong word or think the wrong thoughts.
No, there was an article as well in First Things today by the poster Lomez on the Longhouse, and it talks about all these same things. The term in the online right of the Longhouse, which is a reference to Paleolithic. Paleolithic culture that was matriarchal, and you'd have, you imagine like the Venus of Willendorf, the huge, obese, fat woman statue lording over everything in the society. That's what this is about. And he goes into quite a bit of detail just about how feminized society is, how women have overtaken positions of authority and so forth. And so it isn't just this like pejorative where it's like girls are bad, boys are good kind of thing where people are just mocking something being feminized or effeminate.
It's very real.
It's an actual reality. Like
it's the gynarchy
that people live under.
So like when you have people like Nikki Haley that are running for president, and she's saying things like, maybe we need to try a woman out. Maybe the woman is the perfect leader for our type of regime. The woman fits best into that profile. And the reason you can have all of these women into corporate positions, like is happening now, and they're completely taking over the executive class in corporate America and in politics, is because our type of totalitarianism suits the woman's personality best.
Yes.
And that doesn't mean that men can't be totalitarian, obviously, but it does mean that our particular experience, is very effeminate, and it's very going to be psychologically. And I think men and anybody watching this who have kids, you need to pay particular attention to this. you have to go above and beyond to raise your boys to become men, because every single pressure point in society wants to keep them outside of the masculine horizon.
Yeah. I mean, that's why I tell people, like, your kids should play sports. I mean, I've been in conservative Christian homeschool, private school environments, and in that kind of environment, people are usually very middle class and very intellectualized, and they don't. And I say, like, my sons are going to play football.
Mm-hmm.
My boys are going to play like sports that are contact sports, that you're on a team and you get hit and you're going to encounter pain.
Mm-hmm.
Other people are big into martial arts, having their kids do martial arts.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like that's what I want for my boys, because I mean, for me, that is something that taught me to masculinity, like to be able to endure pain with other young men together to achieve a goal, like that taught me more than any book I could have read.
Exactly.
And so, like, that's what so you have to, like, normally, like 50, 60 years ago, I mean, you think the kind of guys that got drafted to fight in World War II or Vietnam, no one had to teach those guys about how to be a man. There were no books that said, here's how you be a man.
Right.
Here's how to be. There was no red pill manosphere telling them how to talk to women,
right.
Or any of those things. And we needed that because that knowledge was lost. We need these things because nobody knows.
In some sense, like, there's a lot of good books out right now. In fact, in the show notes page, I'll link to a couple of my favorite. There's one by Doug Wilson. There's another by Anthony Esolen. There's a couple other masculine. I mean, what's his name? Foster. His book is really
Michael Foster.
Yeah. So those are all great books. But the fact that we have books to teach these things is an aspect of our decline.
Yeah, it's an indictment. I mean, and it's obviously nothing against those guys who wrote phenomenal books.
Right, of course.
It's an indictment. It's an indictment that we have to even have them written.
Right.
Because we have no idea.
We have no
idea how it is to be a man, but that's
it
didn't happen by accident.
Those are the types of things that need to be absorbed and not read about, you know?
Yeah. Things that are caught and not taught. And so, like, so how do you do that? Like, it's try to catch the things for yourself. And some of it takes acts of courage to actually be manly and do masculine things.
Yeah.
When it's not allowed, when it's forbidden.
Right.
I mean, I remember seeing this in college. Like, this is, in my article, some of the stuff I wrote about is my experiences in college, in evangelical circles in my college days, almost 20 years ago now, where, you were not, you're not allowed to do masculine things. Like, you're not allowed to be a man. You're not allowed to talk frankly or directly. That's you're supposed to couch everything in like Weasley words. And in my experience in college, going back to, the idea of martyrdom, I didn't have the words to articulate what was going on in those days, but I remember going to class, and there was a post a while back by some woke Christian somewhere, talking about how it's a myth that it's a myth that there's this persecution in colleges. That's not happening. That's not real. And it's like, I experienced it. Everybody I know in other colleges experienced it, where you go to, I go to, like, biology class, and the biology professor would be talking about how stupid the evangelicals are. Like, these stupid evangelicals, they're a bunch of idiots. Like, don't they realize that homosexuality is totally normal, or whatever? Like, I mean, it'd be in history class, it'd be in philosophy class, it'd be in whatever, and it'd have nothing to do with the actual, like, lecture or any of the subject matter. They would just start bashing it because, like, in that moment, like, the iteration in those days of literally Hitler was George Bush, and he got into office because of evangelicals. So they were public enemy number one on the college campus. But, like, the college campus is just a window into 15 years from now. And so,
Thanks.
I didn't have the words to articulate it, right? But I was in negative world, right? We should link to this too. Like, if you're familiar with Aaron Renn's 3 Worlds of Evangelicalism, he has a good synopsis of what that is. But like, we were, like, everywhere else was neutral world, where everyone's perception of Christianity and of Christians was, oh, whatever, like, they're just people like anybody else. It's like a hobby, like collecting stamps or being part of the Lions Club, whatever. It's not that big a deal. But, like, negative world is this gynocratic longhouse tyranny, where if you're a Christian, and, like, sincerely a Christian, not a David French kind of Christian, but like an actual Christian, and you really believe the Bible, and you make no bones about it, you don't apologize for it, like you hold to what the Bible says, like you are a bad person. You're a bad person, and we're going to make you pay.
Yeah, that's
you are bad. You are our enemy.
That's the other thing about the type of persecution. It's not like they're banishing your faith. It's that they redefine it, and if you don't adhere to the new catechism, they still call it Christianity. They still call it following Jesus, but it's just wrapped in all of these completely left-wing egalitarian trends that you have to commit to. And so you'll notice this. This is going to become more and more prevalent, but you'll notice this on Twitter and everywhere else, that the loudest people trying to undermine your way of life are doing it in the name of Jesus. That's the nature of the persecution. Yes. That's the nature of it.
Yes. Yeah. And this is why, like, I mean, people have talked about like the He Gets Us. That's the other thing with the Super Bowl, is like the He Gets Us campaign. And it's that same model. It's these people who want to make, Christianity and Jesus appealing to, the mainstream of American culture, which is captured by the left, right? So they have these things about social justice and Jesus was a refugee and all this kind of stuff, because they've hollowed out Christianity and they wear it as a skin suit over progressivism. Like that's what's allowed, right? That's the state church. And so you see this in places where there is like overt masculine, historical persecution. It wasn't just that like actual Christianity was stamped out and persecuted heavily. It's also that you have these like collaborator churches of state approved religion. So there's like, China today has state approved churches over and against the house churches. And so like that's like Russell Moore and David French and Tim Keller and those guys, that's what they are. Like they're the regime approved Christians over and against like historic, traditional, actual Christianity. And so like people don't, I mean, I'm lowercase c Catholic, right? I don't want to say this person's not a Christian. That like, I don't want to be this like obnoxious schismatic person that says they're not real Christians. Only me who interprets this doctrine in this exact teeny tiny particular way are the real Christians. I don't ever want to do that. I want to be Catholic, sincere and Catholic and charitable to anyone who professes Christ's name. But at a certain point you have to say like, these people don't share the same beliefs I do. And the second their faith is put up against any kind of actual real resistance, they buckle.
So there's,
and so what are they?
So there's like, when you think about like the Soviet Union, some of the Eastern experiences where the churches were just completely stamped out and driven underground, that's a different type of revolution. So in Aristotle referred to this situation where he called it the revolution within the word, or a revolution within the form. And from an outside perspective, if you're not aware of the complete swapping out of definitions, they use the same rhetoric, they use the same phrases. They could even on a surface level cite the same like catechisms and confessions. They could do a lot of those things, not completely, but they could do a lot of those things.
Just look at what they do with Imago Dei.
Because they've changed the essence out of the frame. It's a revolution, but most people don't even know that it happened. And so you're talking with these people as if you're on the same team, but they exist in a completely different cosmos than you.
Yeah, you're using the same words, but you're speaking totally different languages. Right. That's the thing. Like I said, like Imago Dei, that's the thing that they use. It's like, look at these image bearers. Look at these are all image bearers. Yeah. And it's like, no, like that's not what that doctrine is about. Yeah. Like that's not what that's for.
They use what's called God terms, words like they're terms that you can't refute, because Imago Dei, like you have to believe in Imago Dei. But so it's hard to refute them, because most people watching the contest, they're not going to realize exactly what's happening. So they use that rhetoric against you, to win the argument. And they could transform the world like that for a long time and keep everybody operating under delusions.
Yeah. I mean, it's like you're playing football and they're playing baseball, and they're scoring runs while you're trying to score touchdowns, and you're just running out in the outfield throwing a ball around while they're scoring runs, right? Like that's what's going on. Like there's two separate, completely different things that are taking place, and you have no idea, and you think you're winning. Like you think you're making you see this online a lot, where people will make these arguments and they'll make it's sort of like James Lindsay fighting wokeness, where it's like he makes this big, long, huge argument, and then they're just like, yeah, but you're a racist. You know, it's like, and like, it's like, doesn't matter. It doesn't matter at all.
Right.
It's the same thing where it's like, you make this big, long argument explaining, oh, actually, that's not what that doctrine means, and that's not what that word means, and here's the historical usage of it. And it's like, nobody has the attention span to be able to deal with that. Like, the way they win is casting you as the enemy, as the bad person, and you have no defense for that, because you're not willing to fight them the same way. And so, like, that's the thing that has to, I think, change, is understanding, like, these are not our friends. We should fight them like tooth and nail. And the hard thing is distinguishing between people that are under their sway, people that are influenced by them, that don't realize it, that don't realize that they're like carrying water for people that hate them and are their enemies, people that are sincere and genuine and decent folks, decent Christian people, but just don't get it. Like, that's the trap you easily can fall into, is like fighting with your friends on Facebook that just do not get it and are never going to get it under the current paradigm. And so that's the I think the single greatest challenge, again, is the collaborators, like the regime churches, the regime Christians. They're much more dangerous to us than anybody. Like, I mean, I say David French and Russell Moore and all these people because people listen to them. People think like these are good, solid, decent. I'm sure there might be people that hear me say this when I say like David French is not a Christian. They're like, how dare you say that? How could you say that? He's a brother in Christ. And it's like he constantly fights against me and my people and fights for the people that want my children dead. Yeah. Right. That's how you need to look at him. Right. He carries water for those people consciously. Yeah. Like self-consciously. His job is to defend those people and fight against any effective resistance to their goals. So no, I'm not going to treat him like a brother. He's duplicitous. He's evil. So no, not at all. So speaking of evil, children using social media is evil. Yes. We both agree on that, and anyone listening here agrees on that. Senator Josh Hawley, someone who I voted for as Attorney General of Missouri when I lived there, Josh Hawley, pretty good senator in the state of Missouri, introduced a bill to ban minors from using social media. And so there's some consternation online about that. Some people really don't like this idea. What are your thoughts, CJay?
Great intentions. I don't even mind using the state in these kind of ways. The only problem is that there's this overall global trend, or like Western global, like push to just completely eliminate anonymous people online. And I see this as really playing into that. But the idea of like coming up with some mechanism to keep kids offline as long as possible, like I absolutely endorse that mentality 100%. I think the idea, you already spoke about like people's attention spans and all that. I don't think kids can read to the extent that they are absorbing, Twitter and other this type of like image-based content all day. It's so bad for kids. And also they absorb the rhetoric and narratives of the Empire of Darkness. So I don't have any problem with that, but I do think that it could become a sort of a trap. And I do think that keeping people from joining online and undermining their anonymous character can be really dangerous in the world that's come, especially because of what we just talked about. I mean, if you say something online that has not been approved by the regime, it's an unorthodox opinion about race, sex, religion, whatever, and they know exactly who you are, and you can't buy food because of it, or you lose your job because of it, that would be a horrible fallout from this type of legislation. That's my 2 cents.
Yeah, absolutely. Like that's where I'm at on it too, is that online anonymity has to be protected at all costs. It is the bedrock of free speech, especially in a totalitarian regime. I mean, if you think about like the guys that wrote the First Amendment in America, and the way just the cultural upbringing and the values that they had to bring them to that place where they wrote the First Amendment. The experiences they had with the British Crown and so forth, and you transport them to current year, right? what would they think?
Yeah.
Right. I mean, and not thinking that like these are the be all and end all of what's good and right and or that the First Amendment is this like absolute moral doctrine like it's part of the Bible. But rather just thinking about like these people that understood the value of free speech to Western, Anglo-Saxon political and legal tradition. Why is that important? You bring them to today and they would think would they be for anonymity online? I think unless you're brain dead, like you have to be like, yes, absolutely. Like you can't have free speech unless you can't be destroyed. They see the soft totalitarian. They would be able to recognize it instantly. The soft totalitarianism, or not so soft actually. I don't really actually like that term. Soft. That's
why I changed it to effeminate. Like Rod Dreher uses soft and hard, which I know what he's trying to say, but I like effeminate and masculine better.
Yeah, well, I think it's edgier too, but also it's different because it's real. It's like it's psychological, it's social totalitarianism as opposed to we're going to put a bullet in your head if you don't do what we say. Totalitarianism. So
the other phrase I like is distinguishing between like therapeutic totalitarianism and militaristic totalitarianism. I think ours is very therapeutic.
Very much so. Yeah, absolutely. Because it's all centered around ostracism, and it's like, I mean, ironically, people that are quasi-autistic who like don't care about social mores, like they're impervious to this. But really, that's just it. It's like so much of it is like it's social pressure that drives most of these things. Yeah, like if you can get the crowd to be a big mob that pushes everybody, you will do this. I mean, it's the quintessential example is the Seinfeld episode with Kramer not putting on the AIDS ribbon, right? It's like, I don't want to wear it. Right? I don't want to. Yeah. Why don't you have the ribbon? Where's the ribbon? Like that's what it is right there, is like the pressure that's on you. And so you need a way out from that, and online anonymity is the only way. It's the only way. And I see people 100%. Be like, well, there's got to be a better, because like you could have trolls saying mean things to people online. It's like, who cares? Yeah,
that's
so what?
That having trolls say mean things online is the actual cost of freedom, not the Iraq War.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Exactly. It's like that's real freedom. It's like, oh, you have to put up with mean people.
Yes, that's the cost. Okay, let's do it.
Yeah, it's okay. Whatever. Yeah. I can.
In fact, I have a really good suggestion for people that are bothered by that. My suggestion is this: log off the internet.
Yeah, leave the internet forever. If you can't handle it, go away. You're not cut out for it. And so but as far as it goes with like the kids online, I don't want my kids online at all. I don't want them to be on TikTok or any of these things. But the issue is the perennial one. It's like, no matter how good and like how strong of a parent I am, and how devoted and how disciplined I am, and how good I am at raising my kids, I could be the all-star father. You don't exist on an island. Like, my family doesn't exist in this like Swiss Family Robinson state where we have our little treehouse and there's no civilization for hundreds of miles, thousands of miles. Like, we don't exist in that world. Like, there are pressures external from us. Yeah. And if the state is, I mean, this is why you have a state, actually. Like, this is why you have political power outside the family, is because it solves these coordination problems where it's like, my little kids have FOMO, have fear of missing out because, well, all their friends are on TikTok. Why can't I be on TikTok, Dad? And that presents a challenge, because now they're reaching an age where they're close to maturity, close to adulthood. And it's, I mean, yeah, even if you're a good dad, who's like, honey, I don't want you on there. It's really bad, right? That she might, my daughter might be able to hold out for a really long time because she's been raised well and she's a faithful Christian, and that's all good. But not everybody. Not everybody's able to do that. And even if you are a good parent, like, there's no perfect formula for like making sure your kids turn out perfectly. Like, you should want to lessen the pressures on children to do bad stuff. Like, that should be obvious. And this is why you have a state, so to keep children from being abused. in this way. And like, this is abuse of children to have them online. Like, how does this trans stuff like get transmitted?
Mm-hmm.
It isn't just the teachers like grooming them. Like, that's one of the conservative things. Like, well, if we just pass these bills to keep the teachers from doing this stuff.
Yeah, it's the private sector.
It's a social contagion.
Yeah, it's the entertainment industry. So what I think should be done, I think you and I mentioned this before, is go after the tech platforms themselves. You know, put the pressure on them, light them under fire. Like that's what DeSantis did with the alcohol licenses, right? He went after the institutions, he went after the businesses. So you don't have to end but you can do things to crack down on the proliferation of evil online without going the Holly route.
Or you could do it with, just through the cell phones, where it's just like, sorry, teenagers are not allowed to have smartphones.
Yeah.
Period. Like, AT&T can't sell them to kids. There's so many different mechanisms you could do this without ending anonymity. But I think the bigger issue is that they're not going to think about that at all. Like, they're not going to be concerned about, and like, because that's not even a thing in their minds.
Yeah.
Is protecting anonymity. Like, they don't understand how crucial that is. Only like a small segment of like
Gab
people
does.
like us think about those things. Yeah, exactly. Gab did. But like the mainstream like normie conservative who watches Fox News doesn't think about being anonymous on. They don't have an anon account on social media. Like, they don't think about those things. They don't see how powerful that is.
Yeah.
But we'll see how. I don't think it stands much chance of passing. No, actually. No. It's kind of one of these larks that they throw out there. But it's at the same time, I would love it if I had protection like that for my children.
Yeah.
So finally, speaking of protection, protecting our sacred democracy, President Donald Trump had a statement recently where he said, I think it was a press release maybe, where he said he wants to set up a ballot harvesting operation. Is that a good idea, CJay?
It's a great idea. I don't know if Trump's going to do it because it's kind of how Trump is. You know, that's part of his bombastic, character. Yeah. So if it's just Trump being Trump, it's still a good idea. Because this is what I was saying last time: is you can't play the game against a ballot harvesting enemy of being nice and kind and expecting them to operate fairly and to do everything. That's not how politics works. If you want to engage in politics, if you want to distinguish between the friend and the enemy and overcome your enemy, you have to play the game of politics. That is going to include these mechanisms, these tactics of ballot harvesting. So I think it's fantastic. I think that, and it's funny because they announced it, or it was going around on Twitter. And if this had happened like 10 years ago, most of the conservatives were like, "Well, we're above that. We're gonna lose, but we're gonna lose nobly." Right. But now most of the commenters are like, let's do it. Most of the commenters are down with it, and I think that's the crazier the left becomes, the more people become radicalized in this way. So that's.
Yeah, absolutely. I think he's probably joking, but I want people to fight fire with fire as much as possible. Like, people would be outraged, even as a joke, him saying this. Not even 10 years ago, like 5 years ago.
Yeah.
Like, if he had said in 2019 or 2018, I'm going to set up a ballot harvesting operation and we're going to be so much better at it than the Democrats. Could you imagine how these people would freak out about it? But if you want to win, like, you have to actually play the same game. Yeah. Right. You can't be playing two different games under two different sets of rules.
Yeah.
Of course they have criminals. Like, the Democratic Party is a party of criminals. So they're going to have criminals at their disposal to do criminal activity.
Well, that's why
there's a gray area there.
Yeah. Well, Trump needs to go back and he needs to reawaken like the Roger Stones and like talking about criminals. Yes. I mean, that's like the Nixon era type of like mob strategies.
Yes.
That there's still some residue there from that era.
Yeah, bring back Roger Stone. Call him immediately. I mean, if he hasn't already, maybe he has.
Yeah, maybe he has. With that, I think we're good for this second episode.
Yeah, that's all we got for today. Unfortunately, we don't have time to have our guest on the poster. We're going to make it maybe next week. Is there anything else? CJ, that you want people to know about that you've written that they need to read?
I am putting out more content finally, so I get like 3 or 4 columns up a week now. But the more exciting thing is, when you posted the first episode, a lot of people are like, where can we find the RSS feed? If you just go to contramundum.captivate.fm, that's kind of our RSS feed. You can see all the different outlets we're on: Spotify, iTunes, everything is there that you need. My Twitter is there, my Substack is there, all of Andrew's stuff is there. So that's kind of going to be the hub for everything related to the podcast. Although Google Podcast has not approved us yet. They're probably trying to censor us.
They know.
I know. Like Michael Bird is probably preventing them from allowing us on the platform or someone like that. So
they know.
Anyways, everything's going to be there. So we'll have it in the show notes, but it'll be there. Contramundum.captivate.fm. That'll be our hub.
Wonderful. And for me, I have a few articles that are going up on news.gab.com, so you'll want to read those. I have one on this topic of martyrdom in current year. As well, I want to discuss just continuing to discuss the collapse of America. That's going to continue on over the next few decades with regard to the East Palestine situation. I wrote last week about collapse in the technological age, talking about AI and things like that. So you want to check that out as well. And as far as that goes, that's all I have for us. You have a great week, and we will see you next time.
See you next time.